Bunions are the most common foot problem in our society, affecting 1 in 4 adults. Some people don't even realize that bunions aren't normal until they become severe and cause debilitating pain. There's a very misleading and popular narrative that bunions are just genetic, a mysterious failure of evolution. And if your grandma had them, the best you can do is wait until the pain is so bad you need surgery. This misinformation causes untold pain and suffering because bunions have a whole host of preventable causes, including joint instability, stiffness, muscle weakness, which in combination with nearby muscle tightness causes bad posture. There are environmental causes, your habits, your movement patterns, and most importantly, your footwear. These are things you can change. You can get better shoes or do exercises for foot strength and mobility, and address issues in the hips that contribute. You could blame genetics for diabetes because we evolved to like sugar, but you can't change your genes. If you or your children have a genetic predisposition to bunions, you need to be more mindful of the environmental triggers. Most of us, even young people, have, if not a mild bunion, at least what I call a pre-bunion, and even if you don't, my 6 recommendations to ward them off will still improve your health. Bunions are preventable for basically everybody if addressed early. So first, what is a bunion? Take a look at your foot. Your big toe, or hallux, has 2 bones. The first joint just moves up and down. Let's look at the second joint, the MTP joint, connecting the hallux to the first metatarsal bone. Obviously, this joint moves up and down, but it also moves left to right. You might know that hips have opposing adductor and abductor muscles. Well, so does your big toe. The adductor hallucis moves the big toe towards the others. If you can snap your big toe against the second toe, you're using the adductor. The abductor hallucis spreads the big toe away from the others. Everybody has these muscles. The first warning sign of a potential bunion is losing the ability to use the abductor through its full range of motion. A year ago, at age 33, I could not move this muscle at all. If that describes you, I promise it is worth it to get it back. As the abductor atrophies, the adductor can also become chronically tight, leading to MTP joint stiffness and instability. These are the 3 most directly observable and easily reversible warning signs of a bunion forming. But there are indirect causes that contribute to these 3 things. Bunions are a postural issue. Posture is a reflection of your strength, mobility, flexibility, and stability. I think we all understand intuitively that if you spend all your time hunched over like this and never arched back like this, you will develop a forward-leaning posture over time because the muscles on your front side adapt to a chronically tight position, and on the back side become chronically loose. Muscles that don't lengthen get tight. Muscles that don't activate get weak, and joints that aren't exercised through their range of motion get stiff. Joint stability requires that muscles be strong on all sides of the joint. Joint mobility requires that muscles be flexible on all sides of the joint. When you are weak on one side of a joint and tight on the opposite side, you get joint instability and bad posture. Your big toe has a posture that is influenced directly by the muscles that move the MTP joint and indirectly by all the forces that you exert on the foot, either from within your body or from the environment. If you keep your arm in a sling for a month, you're going to get a stiff elbow and weak muscles from disuse. The biceps get really tight because they adapt to a shortened position. When you take that sling off, it's going to take a while to regain strength and mobility. You might want to massage the biceps to loosen them up and manually move the joint through its range of motion and strength train the biceps and triceps. When it comes to muscle, you either move it or lose it. Your body will not waste resources maintaining a muscle that doesn't move, and the muscle will atrophy. So what happens to most of us when we do all our exercise for our whole life, including walking in just regular normal shoes that prevent the big toe from spreading, is the abductor gets weak, the adductor gets tight, and the MTP joint gets laterally unstable and starts to develop a bad posture. Take a look at the angle of your MTP joint when you're standing with a relaxed foot. When you flex your toe up, you will see this tendon that runs on top of the metatarsal, so you can estimate when the hallux is aligned straight. Right about here, the hallux is in its proper alignment, straight in line with the metatarsal. The average hallux angle found in unshod populations is close to 0 degrees, meaning their natural resting position. not flexing. Some of these never-shod people have hallux varus, where the big toe rests towards the center line of the body, especially kids who climb skinny trees that constantly stretch the adductor, or this guy, whose job is boat. But in shoe-wearing society, hallux varus is very uncommon for obvious reasons. We almost all have hallux valgus. Hallux valgus up to 15 degrees is considered perfectly normal, not a problem, but it should be called a pre-bunion. Podiatrists will tell you that the human big toe is inherently unstable, and the normal healthy adult foot has a hallux valgus of 12 to 15 degrees on average. But none of the factors that make it unstable exist when it is aligned straight. Hallux valgus is called a bunion when it progresses past 15 degrees, and bunion severity is mainly measured by hallux valgus angle. Mild is 15 to 20 degrees, moderate is 20 to 40 degrees, and severe is over 40 degrees. By the time it gets severe, you are guaranteed to have arthritis, a painful swelling of the MTP joint, a misaligned metatarsal, and other problems that I'll get into in Chapter 3. For now, I just want you to understand that even though you might not notice your bunion until you see or feel the lump, it is the angle or the posture of the foot that causes the pain, dysfunction, and swelling. Bunions can be prevented for basically everyone by addressing the underlying causes early. You can treat an existing bunion with the tips in this video. You'll still have an enlargement, but you can start to reverse the angle, pain, and dysfunction. Treat a bunion with surgery and don't address the underlying causes, it will start to return. The human foot evolved specifically to handle a lot of force and impact from the bottom, not so much from the sides. The human body has evolved specifically for long-distance running. And if you're thinking, most of us can't even run a mile, that's because we put food on our plate by sitting at a desk all day. For most of human existence, we had to chase after animals until they were too exhausted to keep running. There's still tribes in Africa and Mexico that do this, and it takes hours. The Tarahumara tribe run races well over 100 miles just for fun. So when you hear that the human foot is mysteriously susceptible to debilitating problems, don't blame evolution. You could blame evolution for diabetes, but it might be more helpful to blame the modern sedentary lifestyle. We Homo sapiens were hunter-gatherers for about 200,000 years, and although we are extremely adaptable compared to the other animals, what we have today is a bit of a mismatch between the expected environment that we're hardwired for and the actual environment that we live in. And we have a medical industry that is largely trained to band-aid symptoms instead of searching for the actual preventable causes of disease and preemptively educating patients about them. Nat Geo claims that humans have always had bunions based on two pieces of evidence: a footprint in the mud from 6200 BC England and a mummified foot from 2000 BC Egypt. The ancient English footprint did not have a bunion like we're talking about on the big toe. He had a tailor's bunion, not a big problem in modern society, 10 times less common than regular bunions, and much less debilitating because of the strength and importance of the big toe. It's called a tailor's bunion because years ago, tailors would sit cross-legged, and as you can see in this position, puts a lot of pressure on the pinky toe. If you spend 8 hours a day pushing the pinky toe in and never stretching it out, you likely develop joint instability, and the posture of your toe will likely change over time. The Egypt study found a moderate bunion in only 1 of 73 mummified feet. So if today the rate is 1 in 4, the question should be, why has it gotten so much more common? Which the study authors answer quite clearly, saying the reason it was so uncommon is because it occurs almost exclusively in shod, meaning shoe-wearing societies. The article goes on to say that in 14th century England, when absurdly pointy shoes became fashionable, the rate of bunions went up from 6% to 27% of the studied populations. And then moves on from the topic of pointy-toed footwear for the entire rest of the article. It seems like they could have dug a little deeper, maybe mentioning this 1965 study that measured thousands of people's feet and found that bunions were basically non-existent in the elderly who'd spent a lifetime barefoot, but found in almost half of elderly women who'd worn shoes. The thing about normal modern shoes is that they not only prevent abductor hallucis movement, they actively push the big big toe towards the others. Nikes, Vans, Adidas often have symmetrical toe boxes, meaning that if you look at just the toe box, you can't tell if it's a left or a right shoe, and you can draw a line of symmetry through the toe box. But the human foot cannot have a line of symmetry drawn through it because the big toe is further from the heel than the pinky toe. Shoe designers usually ignore this, as well as the fact that healthy toes can spread with each step. Shoes that are actually shaped like a human foot are called clown shoes, and most people don't mind or even prefer that their toes take this narrow posture until they realize the problems that it can cause. Pointy-toed shoes are the main cause of bunions in the category of things that restrict foot movement and regularly put pressure on the side of the big toe and contribute to its weakness, tightness, and instability. As I mentioned before, muscles have opposing muscles. When you use the biceps to lift, you want the opposing muscles, the triceps, to relax. When you push with the triceps, you want the biceps to relax. This is called reciprocal inhibition and is necessary for smooth movement. When you have a weak muscle opposite a chronically tight muscle, the tight muscle will tend to make the weak muscle even weaker over time, in a vicious cycle known as altered reciprocal inhibition. Because a tight muscle can be misinterpreted by the brain as being activated, which encourages the opposing muscle to relax. This is one reason why bunions tend to get worse over time, as the adductor tightness and abductor weakness mutually reinforce each other in a negative feedback loop. Your feet are the foundation of your whole body, so these problems can cause further issues up the kinetic chain. But poor body mechanics in your legs can also cause foot problems. Your feet are connected to your hips. You have muscles for external hip rotation and internal hip rotation, as well as internal tibia rotation and external tibia rotation. Stand up and look at what happens when you rotate your hips out with a planted foot. The shin rotates out, which supinates the ankle, raises the arch, and shifts weight from big toe to pinky. If your natural standing posture has your hips rotated in, the knees cave in, the ankles pronate, the arches flatten, and your feet turn into a bunion factory, especially if they're stiff. Stiffness in the foot can be due to the foot itself, or because it's inside of stiff shoes that prevent natural foot movement. Stiffness occurs in the legs when you can't access a good range of motion in the ankle, or a good rotational range of motion in the knee or the hip. Every step you take, the bones in your legs obviously move forward, but they also rotate. And your arch is not static. It acts as a spring and a shock absorber. If you hold your ankle still, you should be able to move the metatarsal up and down. With each step, walking or running, you want the foot to flatten and the ankle to pronate and the tibia to rotate internally and then spring back into position as the heel comes up. If the joints are stiff, or if the resting position of the foot is already flat with the ankle fully pronated, then this need for pronation will be met at the forefoot instead of the ankle, putting more weight onto the big toe and less on the pinky side. It's not just more weight on the big toe. The first metatarsal is now tipped over, and your sesamoid bones, the two floating bones underneath your MTP joint, absolutely hate to have uneven pressure. If you think about these two bones making a tripod with your heel, it doesn't feel good to tip the tripod over. The goal is to have a neutral resting posture and be able to move every joint in the chain in both directions. If any joint is maxed out, it will be one of the others in the chain that's forced to compensate. The main reason why our society lacks hip mobility is because we sit in chairs all day, putting the hip flexors on the front of the hips in a shortened position, which leads to chronic tightness and weak, overstretched glutes on the backside. When you stand up, this hip flexor tightness likely causes an anterior pelvic tilt. It looks like it should be called posterior tilt because your posterior sticks out, but it refers to the top of the pelvis tilting forward. You can use your abs and glutes to tilt the pelvis back. Stand up and look at what happens to your knees when you do this. When you tilt the pelvis back, the knees rotate out. So if you are chronically anterior tilted, like we all are from sitting in chairs all day, it will be more likely that you also have an interior rotated, pronated, flat-footed standing posture that contributes to bunions. For most of human history, we didn't rest in chairs, we squatted. Even today, half the world does this every time they use the bathroom. If you can't do this comfortably, you'd be considered disabled and need a handicapped toilet. Most Americans can't do this comfortably, not because of genetics, but because we don't practice. Lyme disease left me with bad arthritis in my knees 10 years ago. I still can't bend them all the way, but I work on it every day. The main reason our society lacks midfoot mobility is because we're told to wear supportive shoes with ankle support and arch support. But these external supports prevent movement and decrease the amount of exercise you get for any given activity. So if you have strength or mobility issues, support is going to band-aid your symptoms in the short term and make them worse in the long term. Arch support is not a good idea. Your arch is created by the muscles in your foot and legs. You do not strengthen these muscles by jamming a thing underneath. You strengthen them with exercise. If the problem is that the middle of your arch is too close to the ground, why would the solution be to further reduce or eliminate this distance? The entire point of an arch is that the weight is supported at the ends, and while the soft part of your foot is capable of supporting your body weight, it is not the best candidate for extended periods of time. Redistributing your body weight onto the soft part of your foot can provide temporary relief at best. If you ask your doctor how long it takes wearing arch support to cure your problem, they'll say,
"No, you just do that now. That's just a new thing you do until you and your shitty ankle both die."
Of course, genetics can make you more susceptible to all these issues, but most of the genetic contributors to bunion formation are not true causes, but a mismatch between what we're designed for and our actual habits and environment. First off, babies are never born with bunions. Anyone who tells you otherwise will reveal that they are conflating bunions with congenital hallux valgus. Being born with hallux valgus has been cured in 100% of the documented cases I can find by simply putting the baby foot in a little baby splint for 2 to 3 months, even from very severe angles. When hallux valgus develops during life, even to a moderate angle, it will cause a misaligned metatarsal that deviates from the sesamoid apparatus and causes the pain, swelling, and dysfunction that we call a bunion, most of which will not be cured with a splint. Bunions form over time. It can begin quite young for some, but that doesn't mean they're just genetic. Babies and toddlers are mirroring machines. They copy their parents' behavior, and that includes posture. I have a theory that babies often develop a slight hallux valgus by crawling with their feet out as opposed to straight up and down like some babies do. Verity, who has an excellent page on bunions, posture, gait, and breathing, shows here that her movement patterns as a toddler still prevail today, but she works to improve those imbalances, including reversing her bunions without surgery, and she coaches others to do the same. I would highly recommend that you let your baby or toddler go barefoot as often as feasible. An Austrian study found that over 80% of preschoolers were wearing shoes too small in length, and the smaller the shoe relative to the foot, the more likely the child was to have hallux valgus. The correlation of short shoe to hallux valgus angle has been found repeatedly in studies of small children. A short shoe causes hallux valgus because the shape of normal shoes is too pointy. Babies all have toes that are straight in line with the metatarsals. The toes are the widest part of the foot. This is how the big toe is most stable. For some reason, instead of making shoes shaped like feet, most of us are making our feet shaped like shoes. Some podiatrists and shoe companies have taken note of this and have started making wide Toebox baby shoes. Dr. Rachel Glick notes, shoes that are too tight or constricting can cause foot problems. So it's important to... Are you kidding me? That is not a wide toe box. This is a wide toe box baby shoe. This is a wide toe box baby shoe. Do you really not see this? Okay, so how much does genetics play a role? I've written a whole essay below. The cliff notes are that heritability does not attribute causation. Footwear appears to be more influential than genetics, and that bunions are roughly as heritable as lung cancer. So when podiatrists tell their patients that bunions are just
hereditary, otherwise anybody that's ever worn a tight shoe would have one.
Can you imagine a doctor saying lung cancer is hereditary, otherwise everyone who smoked a cigarette would have it? Or that sunburns are caused by having genetically light skin? Well, just like skin cancer, it is important to know what genetic traits predispose you to bunions, so you can be more mindful of the environmental triggers. First of all, wide feet. Second, long big toe. Shoes are narrow at the front. If you have wide feet or a long big toe, a typical shoe is going to push your big toe more valgus. Pregnant women often develop bunions as pregnancy causes ligament laxity. If the intermetatarsal ligaments are loose, it's easier for the first metatarsal to move and twist away from the foot. Some people have ligaments that are so strong, they cram their feet into pointy-toed shoes and their toes just bust through the sides of the shoe. For most of us, it's the ligaments that give way. Some people are very flexible and can bend into lots of positions and be just fine. Wear tight shoes all day and retain excellent toe mobility and never get bunions. But most of us do lose mobility from wearing shoes that we think of as being properly fitting. On the other end of the spectrum is hypermobility, and there is some debate if this is a cause or an effect of bunions. Either way, the long-term solution for hypermobility is not to restrain movement with external supports. The solution is to strengthen the muscles around the joints. There are plenty of rare genetic conditions that contribute to bunions. My advice here is for the masses. An estimated 1 in 4 adults will get bunions. Here is how to avoid them. These 6 tips will help prevent bunions and can even reverse your hallux valgus angle, but they will not shrink the enlargement of the joint. The only way to shrink a bunion is to surgically remove parts of the bone. Again, we are treating causes, not symptoms. Number 1, stop putting excessive pressure on the side of the big toe. You can put pressure on it, but if you only stretch a joint one way and never the other, you encourage joint instability. The easiest and arguably most important step in preventing bunions is to wear wide toe box footwear that is actually shaped like a human foot. Most shoes marked as wide or extra wide are still not wide in the toe box. Imagine you work all day with a low ceiling that prevents you from sitting up straight. Wearing wide toe box footwear is like raising the ceiling, allowing you to move, but you still need to actively do the movement if you've already developed a bad posture. So number 2, stretch the adductor hallucis. Stretching your big toe out will improve your flexibility and range of motion. You can use the floor, you can use a corner, you can put your fingers in between your toes and move them all around. You can passively stretch the adductor while you exercise by wearing toe spacers, or by wearing toe shoes, or even walking barefoot on certain surfaces. For example, in soft sand, each step will spread your toes. If you're not ready for that, I think you can at least see how regular socks contribute to an adducted toe posture. I highly recommend toe socks, especially in the summertime. My toes feel so much better wearing them. Massage will also improve flexibility. You can run your fingers between the metatarsals with pressure top and bottom. Both of these foot rollers from Chirp are really good at hitting the adductors, and my favorite foot massager is the Chirp RPM, which you can also use in a lot of the same ways you'd use a foam roller, or a handheld foam roller, or a handheld massage gun. Number 3, strength train the abductor. If you can't move your big toe out, you just gotta Uma Thurman it.
Wiggle your big toe.
Just thinking about it and feeling a slight twitch is progress, and just like you can cheat a bicep curl, you can help with your foot and ankle muscles. If you look from the side, you'll see that abduction raises your arches, and therefore exercising it will help reverse flat feet and all the postural issues we talked about from the ground up. Number 4, strengthen the midfoot and ankle. The easiest way to strengthen the rest of the foot and ankle is to do whatever exercise you're currently doing barefoot or wearing barefoot shoes. Barefoot, aka Minimalist shoes, are any shoe with a wide toe box and thin, flexible soles. Simply walking in them will exercise your feet more than you have been. Normal athletic shoes have stiff soles which restrict natural foot movement, and for many people, the padded heels encourage a heavy heel strike. Walking or running barefoot or in barefoot shoes will teach you to use your leg muscles as suspension instead of striking hard with the heel and stiff in the knee, which can cause shin splints and knee pain. Using your muscles will protect your joints and strengthen your muscles. A lot of podiatrists recommend the opposite, supportive shoes, saying that the human foot is too weak for hard surfaces and that we were really made to walk on soft surfaces, like grass. My dude, have you been in nature before? There's sharp sticks and rocks everywhere. If you think it's difficult or uncomfortable to walk full speed barefoot on concrete, you're not good at walking. You've got weak feet, and you shouldn't be giving advice to people on foot health. Take it from someone who used to go to podiatrists a lot and who used to have some weak-ass feet. When I was a kid, my feet hurt every day. I needed special inserts just to walk properly. When I was 16, I fractured my sesamoid just pushing around on my skateboard, and podiatrists thought I just needed orthotics instead of a shoe that is actually shaped like a human foot. Now I wear barefoot shoes full time and I'm in the best shape of my life. Keep in mind that barefoot shoes take time to get used to. Any given activity, let's say a 3-mile run, is more exercise in barefoot shoes than normal shoes. If you find barefoot shoes difficult, don't give up and conclude that your feet are weak and need support, but realize that your feet can be strengthened and healthy people do not need external support for walking or running. Gradually, over 6 to 12 months, stop wearing stiff shoes with ankle support or any type of support because the actual long-term solution to muscle weakness is exercise. If you add instability, you exercise the stabilizer muscles. I use my wobble cushion every day, usually upside down because it feels good. I also use my gibboard. Even if you have no interest in learning how to slackline, it's super fun, and having it on the floor gets me to take breaks for movement throughout my day. We all have sedentary lifestyles. We sit in chairs a lot, which makes us very stiff. Try to get up and move for 5 minutes for every 25 minutes of sitting, get a sit-to-stand converter, work in different positions, including prone position. No matter how tired I am, I can always do this, and when I do this, it makes me want to do this, and then I'll do some of that, and before I know it, I'm getting some good exercise in. The easiest way to improve hip mobility and posture is when you're walking, use your abs and glutes to tilt your pelvis back, and then with every step, you will get a big stretch in the front of the hip. Squats are such a fundamental human movement. Do them every day until you can hold a squat comfortably. If you can't squat ass to grass, squat until parallel. If you can't squat to parallel, do assisted couch squats while you watch TV, or do whatever range of motion that you can without pain. We only lose the ability to squat if we don't practice. I highly recommend getting a toilet stool. First of all, you'll immediately feel how much easier the poop comes out. But Nat Geo doesn't mention any of this. Oh, I wrote that before I added the poop stuff. It makes sense that the media is simply repeating what they hear from mainstream podiatry, whose list of bunion causes looks like this. They recommend supportive shoes, and they warn against the ineffectiveness of advice from would-be footfluencers, that's me, saying, it turns out that the internet is actually one of the worst places to get reliable information on bunions. A 2022 analysis found that nearly 2/3 of bunion information sources online lack transparency. I don't think Nat Geo actually read the study they linked to here, which found that despite being the most frequent source of information, medical practices had the worst transparency and quality of all sources. So it's not that the internet is a bad source of information on bunions, it's that medical practice websites are. Would you like an example? Foot Dr. Zach answered the question, are LeBron's Nikes causing his bunions, by saying,
His feet are actually pretty normal. This condition of bunion is hereditary. Yeah, wearing tight shoes can speed up the process. However,
first of all, speed up. Are you really just gonna breeze right over that? Speed up by how much? The only evidence he gives for his claim that bunions are genetic is a screenshot of a snippet that's been copied and pasted across podiatry websites without being fact-checked or even spell-checked. The late anthropologist Margaret Mead observed many members of a South Sea Island tribe had bunions, yet they had never worn shoes. If you're wondering what the original source of this information is, a scientific journal, maybe her personal memoir. No, the original source of this information is a Newsweek article from 2007. It's obviously made up. If it was true, they would have specified which island it was. The South Sea is a purposely vague, archaic term which could refer to an area with over 1,000 islands. If you want to claim that bunions are hereditary, you gotta do better than some lady that died 50 years ago one time saw people on an island with bunions, not multiple islands, just one island, and if you want to know which one it was, we'll just tell you that it was in the south of the earth. I hope this video helps. In the description below, I have links to products, most of which I use every day for my health, strength, mobility, and balance training. Buying products through these links is the best way to support this channel. My next video is going to be all about the harms of sitting down all day and how to fight back against the sedentary lifestyle. Let me know if you have any questions on that, and thanks for watching.
Now, Let's get these other piggies wiggling.